Hello, everyone, and welcome into Coach Craig's Sports. This is the XFL DFS stream for week number 6. If this is your first time watching, first of all, welcome in. But typically, I do a stream on Tuesday where I do a recap of last week. I'm going to try to combine both streams together this week. Tuesday, unfortunately, had no voice, so a little bit harder to do it on that day. But I'm going to go through some of the snap counts, the target shares, the percentage of carries, the percentage of pass attempts for each team from week number 5. Then we'll go over to my sheet for week number 6, talk about the different plays, talk about some pricing, whether I play them in GPP as a pay down option, as a cash game play, as like a contrarian play, and then just kind of go from there. But if anybody does have any questions during the time of the live stream, if you're watching live, feel free to drop them in the live chat. If you're watching on replay, feel free to leave them down in the comments, and I'll get back to you as quickly as possible. Also, down in those comments, I will have the inactives as they do come out throughout the week for the games as well. But without further ado, we'll get started with a recap of week number 5. We start off with the Arlington Renegades as always. Kyle Slaughter played 100% of the pass attempts and he played 100% of snaps and took 100% of the pass attempts once again. Still wasn't very good. There's a chance that he could get benched potentially in the future, so that is something to watch out for. Davion Smith had 61% of the snaps, 58% of the carries, 19 total carries. He had a rushing touchdown. He had 1 target out of the backfield for a 4% target share. Kenneth Farrow was also around last week. He has been since put on the reserve list, which we'll talk a little bit about later, but he had 36% of snaps, 33% of the carries with 11 total carries and 1 target out of the backfield for a 4% target share. So at this point in time, when we're talking a little bit future looking or looking towards week 6, we have Davion Smith in the backfield, and then we have Letty Brown, who they signed last week. He's a former West Virginia running back. And then Brian Herron, they signed this week as well. He is a former Georgia running back. Would expect Davion Smith to get the bulk load of the carries this week since those guys have not been around for too long. When we move down to the wide receivers, we had Tyler Vaughns played 42% of the snaps. He had a 15% target share with 4 total targets. He played exclusively on the outside once again. So pretty much what we've seen out of him is snaps have been taken down in recent weeks. Still getting a decent target share, though. So that is something to monitor moving forward. Then Lawan Winningham played 45% of the snaps. He had an 8% target share with 2 total targets and also played exclusively on the outside. Brandon Arconato played 42% of the snaps, a 15% target share with 4 total targets, and played exclusively out of the slot. You'll see some pretty flat rates here in terms of the wide receivers, especially in terms of snap counts. Rennell Hall returned from the reserve list. He kind of coming in the XFL, he was a defensive back, then he kind of converted to wide receiver. He was listed as a starter initially on their first team depth chart, then was placed on the reserve list after kind of being banged up to start the year. Played 39% of snaps. He had an 8% target share with 2 total targets. He did have 1 carry as well. He played 17 snaps on the outside, 7 in the slot. So he looks like a versatile chess piece that they'll try to move around a little bit. Then they have Jordan Smallwood played 20% of snaps last week, a 4% target share with only 1 target. 9 snaps on the outside, 4 in the slot. Not too worried about him since he was cut this week. They did sign Victor Bolden, who comes over from the USFL, or well, technically the NFL practice squads after the USFL, but he was the USFL championship MVP for the Birmingham Stallions last year. Pretty good punt returner. Could play a similar role to Rennell Hall, so we'll have to see how that all shakes out in the coming weeks. Don't expect too much for Victor Bolden this week if he's even active for this week's game, though. Then we have Caleb Van Ness, played 45% of snaps. He had 1 total target for a 4% target share. He played 20 snaps out of the slot and 8 on the outside. So him and Arconato look like they're going to be splitting those snap steps moving forward, especially with all these other guys on the outside. And then Javonta Payton played 28% of the snaps, a 4% target share with 1 total target. Primarily played on the outside, 14 on the outside, 4 in the slot. So he's just kind of another guy. Don't really want to touch this Arlington passing situation, especially from the wide receiver position too much, at least for the very near future. Maybe that changes with Victor Bolden coming in. If he can play a decent amount of snaps, get a decent target share, then maybe that's something to look forward to. But this offense is just kind of a mess at this point in time. Then for the tight end, we obviously have Sal Cannell. He played 89% of the snaps. He had a 31% target share with 8 total targets last week. So still very involved in the offense. His price tag's still up there. He's not scoring touchdowns. This offense really isn't scoring points, so it's kind of hard to play him at this point in time. 19% of snaps for Sean Byer, the other tight end, more of a blocking tight end at this point in time. He had 0 targets once again. And then Nate Becker played 30% of snaps. He had a 4% target share with 1 total target. So don't expect too much from those other tight ends in general. Then we move down to the DC defenders. Jordan Ta'amu played 92% of snaps. De'Aaron King did play 10% of snaps. They had one play where they were on the field together, so that is important to note. Pass attempts, 95% of the pass attempts went to Jordan Ta'amu. He had 18 total. 5% of the pass attempts went to De'Aaron King. He just had one lone pass attempt in week 5. And then for the carries, we saw 23% of the carries go to Jordan Ta'amu. He had 8 total carries. De'Aaron King had 6% of the carries, 2 total carries, but he did score a rushing touchdown. So he's very involved in that red zone once again. Moving down to the running backs last week, Abram Smith played 90% of the snaps. He had 66% of the total team carries, 23 total carries. He had 3 rushing touchdowns, a very monster day for him. Unfortunately, I was underweight to the field on him. So that just didn't end up working out too well last week, but he had a 5% target share with 1 total target. Raquel Armstead, his backup, was inactive in week 5. He's been dealing with the calf injury. Did not practice at all during week 5. He's been limited in practice in week 6. We'll see if he's good to go or not for that backup role for this game in week number 6. They signed Raymond Calais essentially off the street. He played 2% of snaps. He had 1 carry for 3% of the total carries. He did not receive a target. I believe he was only involved for 2 plays in total in the offense. Don't expect him to be too involved at this point, even though he was a player that I did like a little bit coming out of college. Then moving down the wide receivers, pretty similar story to what we've seen in recent weeks. So Chris Blair played 90% of the snaps, a 16% target share with 3 total targets. He played 41% of the snaps on the outside, 6 in the slot. So pretty much an outside only wide receiver still once again. Josh Hammond played 75% of the snaps in total, 21% target share with 4 total targets. He had 1 carry for a 3% carry share and played exclusively out of the slot once again. And then Lucky Jackson still kind of remains the favorite wide receiver here, at least at this point in time. 81% of snaps, a 37% target share with 5 total targets. Yes, it's a very big number, but 5 targets still not too much to write home about at this point in time. He played 39 snaps on the outside, 7 in the slot. So pretty much what we've seen out of him as of late or as of this season. Des Ferguson was brought up to the active roster, although he was inactive in week 5. He could potentially work his way into some outside snaps as well. Not really a passing offense, so not really too worried about him moving forward unless we see something otherwise. Jaquez Azard played 5% of the snaps, did not receive a single target, and he played all his snaps out of the slot once again. And then we have Brandon Smith, the wide receiver formerly of Iowa, 36% of snaps, a 0% target share with 0 targets, and played exclusively on the outside, just kind of behind the other 2 guys when they were not out there, essentially. So I do think Jazz Ferguson's probably going to be active this week. We'll see if they have 6 wide receivers active or like Brandon Smith's inactive, maybe even Azard, since he's not really been doing much outside of that 1 touchdown in week 4. In terms of the tight ends, Ethan Wolf was inactive again once again in week 5, knee ankle issue, but should be back for week 6 at this point in time. Billy Moore McKinney played 68% of snaps. He had a 16% target share with 3 total targets. We had Trey Berry behind him, played 3% of snaps, so like 2 snaps in total. Didn't receive a single target during that time. Alex Ellis played 46% of snaps. He had a 5% target share with a lone 1 target. So pretty much out of the tight ends, if Ethan West's good to go, it's safe to assume that he'll be back in his former role. Not really a guy that we want to play for DFS, but he'll probably get 3 to 4 targets as we've seen out of this lead tight end position most weeks for the decent defenders. Then we move down to the Houston Roughnecks. We saw 3% of snaps for Cole McDonald, 97% of snaps for Brandon Silvers. So McDonald was not super involved, but they were trailing quite a bit in this game as well. 100% of the pass attempts for Brandon Silvers, 0% of the pass attempts for Cole McDonald. McDonald had 8% of the carries, but he had 1 total carry. Brandon Silvers did not have a single carry in week number 5. And then for the running backs, we saw Max Borghi play 54% of the snaps. He had 46% of the total carries, 6 carries in total, 1 touchdown. He had 5 targets out of the backfield for 11% target share. And then behind him, we had Bryson Aline, 31% of snaps, 38% of the carries with 5 total carries, 11% target share with 5 targets as well. So both running backs were very involved out of the backfield. Not too much on the ground, though. And we had Dewan Lee play 3% of snaps. He had 8% of the carries with 1 total carry. Did not receive a single target out of the backfield. Moving down to the wide receivers, obviously there was some big news in this game, but we're going to start off with Deontay Burnett, played 100% of snaps. He had a 17% target share with 8 total targets, played exclusively on the outside once again. And then we had Giante Kirkland, who played 7% of snaps. He ultimately injured his shoulder in this game. Was according to Evan Wilsmore, he listed as a chest injury, but he is done for the season. He was one of their most explosive playmakers. So that's going to open up some value, especially in week 6 and moving forward potentially for this Houston team. But obviously a big loss for them overall. He had 2% target share with the one lone target last week, and it played exclusively on the outside. After he went down, Justin Smith came in, played 93% of snaps. He had a 9% target share with 4 total targets and a touchdown, played exclusively on the slot, or exclusively on the outside, in the absence of Kirkland overall. We saw Nick Holley get 41% of snaps, a 2% target share with only 1 target. He played exclusively out of the slot once again. Kind of seems like they're phasing him out at this point in time. Cedric Byrd played 47% of snaps. He had a 20% target share with 9 total targets. A lot of targets for Cedric Byrd the last 2 weeks, played exclusively out of the slot as well. And then Travell Harris, who I like quite a ton, 63% of snaps, 13% target share with 6 total targets, and played also exclusively out of the slot. And then last but not least, out of those slot guys, Ben Putnam, 50% of snaps, a 15% target share with 7 total targets. He also played exclusively out of the slot. Aaron Nelson was inactive in week 5. Garrett Owens, the tight end, played 9% of snaps and had 0 targets for a 0% target share. I'm going to grab a drink of water here before we get over to Orlando. So for the Orlando Guardians, we saw Paxton Lynch. He played 38% of the snaps. He started the game. He saw 26% of the pass attempts, 9 total. He didn't have a touchdown. He didn't throw an interception. 17% of the carries. He had 4 total carries. Just wasn't too efficient on offense overall. We saw, Quentin Dormady come back into this. They had 3 quarterbacks active last week. And Dormady actually played really well. He played 56% of the total snaps. He did not have a single carry, though, so he had 0% of the team carries. 74% of the pass attempts, though. He had 25 total, threw 2 touchdowns with 0 interceptions. He has been named the starting quarterback for week 6, so he's an interesting value play for the week 6 slate overall. And then we had Quentin Flowers, kind of the former XFL quarterback for the Vipers last time around. 0% of pass attempts. He didn't attempt a single pass. He had 6% of snaps. He had 2 total carries for an 8% carry share, and he did score a rushing touchdown last week. So maybe he gets involved in this quarterback thing. Maybe it's him and Dormady kind of splitting snaps at points. Maybe they got some packages for Flowers. Not the greatest situation, but Dormady, if you're going to play any of these quarterbacks, would be the one for week number 6. At the running back position, we saw Jermaine Martin get 56% of snaps, which is actually up quite a bit for him. 37.5% of the total carries, 9 total carries with 1 rushing touchdown, and did not receive a target out of the backfield. Devin Darrington played 32% of the snaps. He had 25% of the carries with 6 total carries and did not receive a target out of the backfield. Kind of interesting since he was pretty involved out of the backfield in terms of the receiving role last week. So he really didn't pay off at his cheap price tag, but maybe we see Dormady push the ball down the field a little bit more because he does have the highest average depth of target in the league per PFF at this point in time. Granted, his sample size is a little bit smaller than some other guys, though, but definitely somebody to consider there. But then we had Dedrick Thomas, 20% of snaps. He had a 6% target share with 2 total targets, 12.5% carry share with 3 total carries out of the backfield. He lined up in the backfield 5 times, out wide 3 times, and in the slot 6 times. So he's kind of their versatile chess piece once again, mainly functioning as kind of like a third running back or kind of a scat back overall. Charleston Rambo played 99% of snaps. He's out there a ton once again, 15% target share. He had 5 targets in this game. I believe that's the highest total for him on the season. He did score a touchdown. 58 of his snaps did come out on the outside, 11 in the slot, so primarily on the outside once again. Cody Lattimore played 70% of the snaps. He had a 24% target share with 8 total targets. He had 1 touchdown. He's been one of the most consistent receivers in the XFL. Technically, they list him as a tight end, but he's pretty much a wide receiver as well. And he played exclusively in line and in the slot once again this week. Eli Rogers, their slot wide receiver, played 68% of snaps. 12% target share with 4 total targets, played exclusively out of the slot once again. You know what you're getting with him. It's a floor, but unless he's scoring a touchdown, probably not going to help you guys out. And then we had Lance Lenore, played 97% of snaps, 24% target share with 8 total targets, and played exclusively on the outside. So last week I was saying Lance Lenore's big game's coming. Didn't quite get there last week. The target share was there. The targets were there. Didn't score a touchdown or anything else like that. But still a solid game for his price tag. Like him a lot once again this week. Then the last wide receiver that they have is Dan Williams. He had one snap, 1% of total snaps, didn't receive a single target, and played on the outside in that lone snap. For the tight ends, we have Logan Carter once again, played 39% of snaps, 12% target share with 4 total targets. So maybe he soaked up some of the running back targets since he's kind of like their fullback or that dump off tight end at this point in time. Ryan Becker, one of the other tight ends, did not play a single snap or draw a target. And then Jalen Smith, kind of their, athletic tight end at this point in time, played 17% of snaps, a 6% target share with 2 total targets. He's a guy that does have some pretty good upside, but not on the field enough to really matter at this point in time. For the San Antonio Browns, Jack Cohen played 44% of snaps. He also had 44% of pass attempts, oddly enough. He had 0 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and a fumble. He played 24 snaps in total, and he had 3 turnovers. So he was averaging a turnover every 8 plays. Not a guy that we really want to play for DFS purposes. Reed Sinnett did get the start. He played 56% of snaps, had 56% of pass attempts with 1 touchdown, 1 interception. 7% of the carries for him with 1 total carry. Jack Cohen had 21% of carries with a 3% or with 3 total carries. Reed Sinnett was actually looking really good in this game. Unfortunately, he broke his foot, and he's done for this season. So looks like they're going to have to go back to Jack Cohen at this point in time, and he's been terrible the last 3 games. So not anybody that we want to play for DFS purposes. Jawan Pass likely the backup behind him this week. Former Prairie A&M or Prairie View A&M, quarterback, does offer a little bit more rushing upside than like a Jack Cohen, but still pretty raw at the same time too. Not the greatest upside with him either. And then they did go out and get Kurt Benkert to be kind of the backup. I assume that he ends up being the starter, over the next couple weeks. Then at running back, we have Kalen Balaj, who had 59% of snaps, 29% of carries with 4 total carries, a 21% target share with 7 targets. So the thing I'm going to mention is they did get a new offensive coordinator. It seems like they were still pass happy once again in week 5. So expect the same thing in week 6. Kalen Balaj is dealing with an Achilles soreness at this point in time, was limited yesterday in practice. I was listening to the podcast over at Fantasy Points earlier today. I believe Justin Freeman said that Kalen Balaj has been ruled out for this week. If we find anything out more about that, we'll list it down below. But if he's out this week, Jaquez Patrick's going to look pretty good. They did just activate Calvin Turner, the former Hawaii running back from the reserve list. He's kind of this hybrid running back wide receiver guy, so he could be involved with a couple carries, involved out pass catching out of the backfield and everything else like that as well. But in terms of last week, Jaquez Patrick had 41% of snaps, 43% of carries with 6 total carries. He had 18% target share with 6 total targets. So he was pretty involved. John Hillman played 20% of snaps, 0% of the carries, 0 total carries. He did have 1 target out of the backfield for a 3% target share, though. So pretty much know what we're getting out of the backfield. San Antonio is not a team I really want to mess with, especially in week 6. Just too many moving pieces, which we'll talk about a little bit more when I get over to my sheet. But we had TJ Vasher play 87% of snaps. He had a 9% target share with 3 total targets and 1 touchdown. Primarily played on the outside. Once again, 43 snaps on the outside, 4 in the slot. Jalen Tolliver only played 28% of snaps in week number 5, 0% target share. He played 10 snaps on the outside, 5 in the slot. So the guy that had 10 targets the week before was super involved, just kind of disappeared from the offense, was kind of weird. They actually ended up cutting him earlier this week until they put Reed Sinnett on reserve list, and then they signed Jalen Tolliver back. So I'm not sure what's up with that situation because he looked like he was their best wide receiver, at least so far throughout the season. So that is a very interesting situation to monitor. Maybe you can get some low ownership on him this week if you really want to take a shot in GPPs, but it's mainly if you're like 50 max and 150 max or something like that. Then we get down to Darius Roberson Jr., played 9% of snaps, 3% target share with 1 target, played 2 snaps in the slot, 3 on the outside. He was actually cut this week too, so we don't have to worry about him too much. Fred Brown played 89% of snaps. He had a 26% target share with 9 total targets, played 30 of his snaps out of the slot, 16 on the outside, so he could be a target once again this week. And then we had Travis Tovin, 87% of snaps and 9% target share with 3 total targets. Was pretty involved the week prior, 16 snaps on the outside, 31 in the slot. So a little bit of versatility there. Supposedly he is out once again supposedly Tovin is out this week. So we'll check to confirm that, and then I'll leave it down in the comments. And then we had Travis Johnson, who was inactive in week 5. He's still kind of dealing with the back injury, so don't expect too much from him. At tight end, we have Alize Mack, played 57% of the snaps. He had a 6% target share with 2 total targets. Then behind him, we had Dean Yelder for 22% of snaps and also a 6% total target share with 2 total targets as well. And then I will also mention that Landon Akers, their leading wide receiver from week number 1, is returning from an ankle injury, I believe it was, from the reserve list this week. So I expect him to take over that slot role for this team. It will be really interesting to see who the 2 outside wide receivers are. I expect one's going to be TJ Vasher. The other one could be Jalen Tolliver. It could be Travis. It could have been Travis Tovini, but it sounds like he's going to be out this week. So it could be, Travis Johnson if he's good to go. It could be Jalen Tolliver. It could be Fred Brown. So it'd just be really interesting to see what that all shakes up and looks like at this point. But we're going to get down to the next team, which is the Seattle Sea Dragons. Ben DiNucci played 100% of the snaps, had 100% of the pass attempts once again. Morgan Ellison, the running back, 19% of snaps. He had 26% of carries, 6 total carries, didn't receive a single target out of the backfield. He was banged up last week. He's already been ruled out for this week, so not too worried about him for week number 6, obviously. But going forward, he could be a good player once again once he does get healthy. And then there was TJ Hammonds. He had 19% of snaps, 17% of carries with 4 total carries. He had 1 target out of the backfield for a 3% target share. And then Darius Bradwell got the biggest bulk load of the work last week. Would expect it to be the same once again this week. 52% of the snaps, 39% of the carries. He had 9 total carries, did have a rushing touchdown, did not receive a single target out of the backfield. He's a guy that's mainly been on the Chargers practice squad for a couple years. Hasn't done too much in terms of NFL action, but, could be a good guy for the XFL as well. Moving down to the receivers, we had DeCourt Pearson played 84% of snaps, 26% target share with 8 total targets. Played exclusively out of the slot once again. Blake Jackson, 89% of snaps, a 10% target share with only 3 targets this week. So it was a really down week for Blake Jackson. Maybe for week 6 DFS, that's contrarian play since maybe some people are off of him because of last week. Played exclusively out of the slot once again. Josh Gordon only played 40% of snaps. However, he had a 23% target share, 7 total targets, played exclusively on the outside once again. So when he's out there, they're trying to get him the ball, but he's just not out there a ton at this point in time. So a little bit risky play with his given price tag. Juwan Green, 55% of snaps. He has a 6% total target share. In week number 5, he drew 2 targets. He played 11 snaps out of the slot, 23 on the outside. So he's kind of the guy they move around a little bit. He has been limited in practice this week with a hip injury. I believe he's probable, though. And then we had Jordan Vesey played 61% of snaps, only a 6% target share this week with 2 total targets, played exclusively on the outside once again. And then we had Damian Willis, played 60% of snaps, a 26% target share, 8 total targets, and 1 touchdown. So he's really the guy that popped up last week. Assuming that he's going to be more popular this week, he played exclusively on the outside once again. I think if you want to get some leverage, especially in GPPs, maybe go to Jordan Vesey or like a Juwan Green instead of Damian Willis. Probably a little bit less on Green just because he's dealing with that hip injury. Then last but not least, we had Kelvin McKnight, played 11% of snaps, didn't see a single target once again, played exclusively out of the slot. And then we had Charlie Tamoapo, the tight end, was inactive for week 5, so he's been kind of banged up, still not playing at this point in time. For the Battlehawks, we had AJ McCarron take 100% of the snaps and 100% of the pass attempts. Once again, nothing really new there. Brian Hill had 72% of the snaps, 67% of the carries. Apparently, I did not write down the total amount of carries for whatever reason. He had a 15% target share with 5 total targets. We had Mateo Durant. He had 18% of the snaps, 10% of the carries, didn't receive a single target in week number 5. Kareem Walker had 5% of the snaps, 5% of the carries, and also did not receive a target. So, backfield for St. Louis, pretty clear. It's Brian Hill. Once again, he's going to look like a pretty good play. Then we move down to the wide receivers for the Battlehawks. We got Darius Shepard, played 98% of the snaps. He played all but 1 snap, I believe. 15% target share with 5 total targets. He played 50 snaps on the outside, 14 in the slot. So primarily on the outside once again. Hakeem Butler played 100% of the snaps. He's kind of been the favorite target of AJ McCarron. 35% target share with 12 total targets. It is important to note that this was the only week of the XFL season that he did not score a touchdown, but he's still super involved, still getting a ton of targets, so still going to be a guy that you want to target for week 6 as well. Austin Pearl had 82% of snaps, 15% target share of 5 total targets, primarily played out of the slot once again. Then we had Steven Mitchell. He played 49 snaps. He had a 9% target share with 3 total targets. He did receive he had a receiving touchdown and played exclusively on the outside once again. Gary Jennings did not play at all, so we don't have to worry about him. Then George Campbell, he played about 4 snaps total, 6% of the snaps. He had a 3% target share. He had 1 target, but he did catch that target for a touchdown, so at least he made it count. He had 1 snap on the outside, 3 in the slot. Typically, he's been exclusively on the outside, at least early on throughout the season. For the tight ends, Jake Sutherland played 51% of snaps, a 6% target share with 2 total targets. Giovanni Haskins played 18% of snaps, a 3% target share with only 1 target. Last but not least, we get down to the Vegas Vipers. Brett Hundley, he practiced in full all week. Looks like Luis Perez is just going to be the starter until we see otherwise. Luis Perez played 100% of snaps, 100% of pass attempts, 6% of carries with 2 total carries. Brett Hundley did not get in the game at all last week. At running back, it was kind of the Rod Smith show last week. He had 58% of the snaps, 58% of the carries, 18 total carries, 2 rushing touchdowns, 4% target share with only 1 target out of the backfield. So he was pretty good. I expect him to be popular this week just because he kind of had that big week last week. I don't expect that to repeat once again. I kind of think it's a little bit more of a fluke than anything, honestly. John Levitt had 27% of snaps, 16% of the carries, 5 total carries. He did fumble, so I think that's kind of why they leaned on Rod Smith a little bit more, especially down the stretch. He had a 7% target share with 2 total targets. Could be an interesting play this week, especially if they decide to go back to him a little bit more. DeAndre Torrey, the third running back, had 14% of snaps, 19% of carries with 6 total carries. He had 1 target out of the backfield for a 4% target share. Brian Burt played 3% of snaps. He didn't see a single carry or a single target in his time on the field, which was like a whole 2 plays. For the wide receivers, Jeff Badette played 77% of the snaps, 21% target share. For whatever reason, I didn't write his targets down. I believe it was 8 or 9 targets. He had 2 touchdowns. He didn't receive a single carry in this game. He played 42 of his snaps out of the slot, 9 on the outside. So still primarily out of the slot overall. Geronimo Allison returned. He was playing primarily on the outside once again. 88% of the snaps, 21% target share, 6 total targets. Like I said, exclusively on the outside. He looked pretty good. We'll see what that situation looks like with him and Martavis Bryant if they're both active this week, since Martavis Bryant did practice in full yesterday. Then we had Sneak Sweeting, played 68% of the snaps, 18% target share with 5 total targets. Did not receive a single carry on this game, though. He had 40 snaps on the outside, 5 in the slots. So the time before that, we really saw Matthew Sexton play on the outside. Play a lot of snaps, didn't really do much, but Sweeting was more productive. So looks like they went to Sweeting last week as kind of that other guy. We'll see what it looks like moving forward. Matthew Sexton played 11% of snaps. He had 0 targets. He played 6 snaps in the slot, 1 on the outside. So not too involved at this point in time. Tight ends, there's still 4 of them. They had a decent amount of targets last week, if I'm being honest. Brandon Dillon that played 47% of snaps, a 4% target share with 1 total target. Cam Sneddon played 50% of the snaps, 11% target share with 3 total targets. Sean Price, for whatever reason, I didn't write down his snaps, I believe is around 20%. He had a 4% target share, 1 total target, but he did catch it for a touchdown. And then Travis Kuntz, 28% of snaps, 7% target share with 2 total targets overall. So those tight ends, they really lean on a little bit more. We'll see if that changes with Martavis Bryant potentially back in the mix this week. But with that being said, it's about a half hour long at this point in time. Going through a recap of last week, I'm going to move over to my spreadsheet for week 6 DFS, kind of go through some of my notes there. As always, this stuff is going to be up on my Patreon at patreon.com/CoachCraigSports. There is a small monthly donation over there, just helps support myself and the work that I do for all of this, but a lot of good resources over there. I do try to update this sheet throughout the week as well, especially like later today when we do get some more injury reports, if anything does change, but I'll try to leave some stuff down in the comments as well. Starting off with the Arlington Renegades, Kyle Slaughter is $7,700. No interest in playing him. He's not been good. It's the same exact matchup as last week where he was not good either. If you really wanted to play like one of the other quarterbacks, you probably could, but if you can't really play either of the other quarterbacks at this point in time. We don't really know who's going to be the backup or anything else like that. Would not be surprised if they try to go back to Drew Plitt, or even if they go to Kevin Anderson at some point, just because Slaughter's not been good at all. For running backs, Really, Davion Smith's the only one that's on DraftKings. He's $7,800. You can use him as a GPP play, maybe even a cash game option. A little bit pricier than I would like to pay, but he definitely is going to have the volume. Letty Brown, Brian Heron. I can't remember if I'm pronouncing his name right. They're both not on DraftKings. Don't expect big roles from either one of them. In terms of the wide receivers, I'm not really particularly interested in any of these guys from Arlington. If you really want to take a shot on somebody, maybe 3K flat minimum Rennell Hall. Jordan Smallwood was cut this week. They signed Victor Bolden. He's not on DraftKings. We'll see if he's active for this game or not. If he's active, maybe that reduces the role for Rennell Hall a little bit since those guys kind of seem pretty similar. Tyler Vaughn's, he's getting target share, so maybe you could roll him out in a GPP as a contrarian option, but not really too interested in the wide receiver group here. If you're looking at a pass catcher, probably Sal Cannell at $7,600 for GPP, but he really just doesn't have the same upside that you really want out of him at the same time. Then the Renegades defense, you can play in GPP, you can play in cash. I think they're a fine option in either one. Going to be probably the top projecting defense overall since they're going against San Antonio, and it's a pretty similar matchup to the last time. And if you want to argue that Reed Sinnett was better than Jack Cohen, which I will argue, then Renegades defense should look even better this week. Moving down to the defenders, we have Jordan Ta'amu. He's $8,700. He's probably going to be pretty popular this week just because his price tag has been dropping. He's a name that people know. He does have a little bit upside, but mainly a GPP play for me at this point in time. Abram Smith, he's $9,400, which is pretty hefty price tag. He's a GPP play for me. Maybe you could play him in cash if Raquel Armstead's out once again, but you still have to worry a little bit about Derek King taking away some of those touchdowns. Speaking of King, he's $8,000. Don't really want to play him at this point in time because you're just hoping you get lucky with a bunch of touchdowns out of him. In terms of the wide receivers, it's probably just Lucky Jackson at $5,500 for GPPs if you want to play him there. Maybe in a cash game option if you really, really need to in that price tag. If you want to take a shot on a Chris Blair, you could do it. Josh Hammond's still too overpriced for me personally. Ethan Wolf has been limited both days due to his ankle. He's $2,800. If you really wanted to take a shot there, you could, but not something I'm doing myself at this point in time. The defenders defense, they're $4,300. They played reasonably well so far this season, but they're going against Houston, which is one of the better offensive teams in the league, if not the best offensive team in the league. So not really particularly interested in them at this point in time. Brandon Silvers, he's $10,700. You can consider him a GPP play once again this week. I don't think you need to play him at cash. I think we got a couple other cash game quarterback options. Apparently, I didn't write him and Max Borgi down. I think Max Borgi is a GPP option as well. You can look at some people are talking about Bryson Lean at $5,800. There is a path to get there. It's just not one that I'm really excited about. Max Borgi would be the running back of choice. DeJuan Lee barely played last week. You can't really trust on him. In terms of the wide receivers, I think there's a couple different guys you can target here. So Deontay Burnett, $9,700 GPP. I think he's a little bit contrarian option because everybody's just flocking to Justin Smith after Kirkland went down. So if you want to go after Burnett or Bird or Harris, I think they're all reasonable options there. Obviously, Kirkland is done for this season. Justin Smith I have him listed as a GPP option. He's probably a cash game option this week now that Kirkland has been rolled out. I'm not too interested in Ben Putnam. It's kind of a dart throw if you really want to go there. Nelson hasn't been active, so not worried about him. Maybe he comes in and plays a little bit on the outside too. Maybe that kind of knocks Justin Smith down a little bit. But then they signed Ja'Cory Roberson and Tavon Salter. I think that's how you pronounce his name. They're both down on DraftKings. So obviously we can't play them this week. I don't know if either one of them will be active. I'm going to go on the assumption that they're not, though. Garrett Owens, not interested in. The Roughnecks defense, $4,100 for one of the best defenses in the league. Going against a run-heavy team, if they can stop the run, they're going to look pretty good. But they are a GPP option for me as well. That DC offensive line does have some holes in it as well. So if they can get after Jordan Ta'amu, it could be a pretty good game for them. So get down to Orlando. Mainly Quentin Dormady here. Obviously, a $6,000 is a pay-down option. Probably for GPPs more than anything. Maybe you could roll them out in cash, but it is a little bit risky at that point in time since Orlando's played multiple quarterbacks all but 1 week so far this season. So there is some risk there as well. Jermaine Martin, $6,200. Devin Darrington, $5,100. They just be super contrarian plays. Not really interested there. In terms of cash game, we're looking at Cody Lattimore, $7,000. Looks pretty good in cash. You can play him GPP, obviously, as well. Charleston Rambo, some people are probably going to chase since he has had a touchdown 2 straight weeks. Not super interested in him myself. Lance Lenoir is my guy. Once again, GPP pay down option at $3,700. Out there playing the ton, got the target share last week. If he gets in the end zone, he's going to look really good overall. Not really interested in any of the other options for pass catching there. Guardians defense has not been good, so we're not really interested there as well. Moving down to the Brahmas, actually Jack Cohen, $7,500. Not interested in him, but it is important to note that he's been limited both days due to an ankle injury. If something happens to him, Jawan Pass gets in there, maybe a little bit of rushing upside. Not sure that they really want to run the quarterback too much, but he could have a little bit of leverage there. So just monitor Jack Cohen's status, but I believe he is active for this week. Kalen Balaj was limited Thursday due to the Achilles. Sounds like he's out at this point in time, so would assume that you guys do not want to play him. That would make Patrick a little bit interesting at $5,000. GPP option, like if you really wanted to play him in cash, you could, but I don't know if there's enough carries to go around in this backfield at this point in time with the run heavy scheme that they've been implementing in recent weeks, even despite the change at offensive coordinator. John Hillman's behind him. He's $3,000. And I mean, like with no Kalen Balaj, if you really want to take a dart throw there, you could do it. They did bring Calvin Turner back this week. He did play a running back at Hawaii. The NFL kind of viewed him more as a slot wide receiver. He didn't get drafted, didn't really latch on with any teams, but he is a pretty explosive playmaker if he's healthy. He's been kind of limited this week with that foot injury that he's coming back from. Hopefully he's good to go, though. $5,500. Like if you really want a contrarian play, he could be all right this week, especially if he gets carries and some receptions out of the backfield as well. Just kind of depends if they're going to play him at wide receiver or at running back, because you can kind of do it at both. Technically, on the XFL website, they do have him listed as a wide receiver, though. For the wide receivers for San Antonio, they do get Landon Akers back this week. He's $8,700, so there's not really any interest in playing him this week, honestly. Jalen Tolliver, $6,600. We have no idea what his role is going to be, so he'd be a complete contrarian option if you want to go there this week. Fred Brown and TJ Vasher would be kind of the paydown options. Fred Brown, $3,200. TJ Vasher, $3,400. Vasher scored 2 straight weeks at this point in time, so those would be the two that I'm most interested in. But overall, kind of avoiding San Antonio just as a rule of thumb this week. Their offense is just kind of sputtering, not looking too good. If you really want to play like a Jaquiz Patrick, you can go there, but it's probably going to be more popular at this point in time. Alize Mack, Deion Yelder, not really interested there. Brahma's defense at $3,800 is probably the most likely Brahma's player that I am playing this week. Cash game option against Arlington, whose offense kind of sucks too. Moving down to the Seattle Sea Dragons. Ben DiNucci is $11,500. He's been one of the most consistent quarterbacks, so his price tag is definitely warranted. Look at him at GPP. You could probably play him in cash if you really want to as well. We have some decent cheap options that it probably makes him available to do so. Morgan Nelson's out this week due to his knee injury. TJ Ham is $3,200. I guess you could make him a paydown option, dart throw, if you really wanted to go there, but Darius Bradwell, $5,500 GPP. Seems like a lot of people are probably going to be playing him. So maybe if you really want to get off it, you could go to Hammonds, or you just say they're going to throw the ball a little bit more as well. Josh Gordon, GPP only at $10,500. More of a contrarian play at this point in time, but not even that, because he's still getting ownership based on his name. So a little bit riskier at this point in time. Jawan Green is $3,900. You could look at him as a potential paydown option. Was limited in practice due to a hip injury, but he is probable to play this week. Blake Jackson, I like kind of as the contrarian play this week. I think a lot of people are going to be down on him. He's $8,600. Look at him in GPPs once again. Calvin McKnight we're avoiding. Ja'Cory Pearson, I don't know how we got paydown option for Pearson there. That was a typo apparently, because Pearson is definitely not a paydown option at $11,300. He's a GPP option. And at this point in time, if you're paying for him and DiNucci together, you're spending almost half your salary. So that is something to consider, but we do have value options out there for sure this week. Jordan VC, I think, is kind of like a contrarian play at $4,500. You could definitely look there. Damian Willis, GPP pay down option, probably going to be pretty popular this week since, he scored the touchdown last week, was more involved. Sea Dragons, I think you could probably roll out is a GPP, maybe even a cash game play. It's definitely a good matchup. Whether or not they give up points is kind of another story at this point in time. AJ McCarron, GPP option for me at $10,900. If you really want to roll him out in cash, you could probably do so, since he's one of the safer quarterbacks at this point in time. but probably going all the way out to Ben DiNucci or going all the way down to Quentin Dormandy for cash myself if I'm going that route, honestly. Then we get down to running back. Brian Hill's $8,900. He's probably the chalkiest running back once again this week. He's the one that came up the most optimal for me once again. So he is a cash game play. I'm not really interested in Mateo Durant or Kareem Walker at this point in time. Puka Williams was cut this week. Forgot to write that down there. So obviously don't play him. Team Butler, $9,800. Look at him as a cash game option once again. He scored 4 out of the 5 weeks. He's had a giant target share, I believe, 4 out of the 5 weeks as well. So definitely a guy that we want to consider. George Campbell scored a touchdown last week, but doesn't play enough. So we're not looking at him or Gary Jennings. If you really want to take a dart throw on Stephen Mitchell, once again, you could go there. Probably a little bit more popular. He's probable due to his quad injury, which he's kind of been dealing with for a while anyways. Austin Perel, Darius Shepard, they're both just GPP options for me as well. You really need them to get in the end zone to pay off. And, otherwise they're just guys that are going to catch, 5 passes for 50 yards or something like that. Not really. Chad Hansen hasn't played since he signed with the team. Not interested in the tight ends. Not super interested in the Battlehawks defense this week, but if you really want to use them as a contrarian play, you could definitely do it. Then we move down to the Vipers. Luis Perez, $8,600 GPP option there. Probably could even roll him out in cash if you really wanted to, if you know that, especially if we get news that he's starting and we don't think Brett Hundley's going to get in, which is kind of interesting since we kind of thought Hundley would be one of the better quarterbacks in this league. Just kind of sucks that these two guys are on the same team. Maybe if Brett Hundley gets traded to somewhere else, then we could have some more options. In terms of the running backs, not super interested in anybody here, honestly. Maybe John Lovett if you wanted to run a contrarian play. Rod Smith's probably going to be too chalky after that 2-touchdown game, and he's really just not that good at this point in time. For the wide receivers, I think Jeff Badette could be a cash game option. Once again, you can obviously play him in GPPs, $10,200. Hefty price tag, but he's paid off more times than not. And then Geronimo Allison, I think he's a GPP option, especially if you know that he's starting once again. If you really want to play Martavius Bryant as a GPP option at $7,800, kind of contrarian play, you could do it as well. Sweden probably going to get some ownership still, but I think he kind of loses out a little bit of value with everybody back healthy in this wide receiver room. Not too interested in the tight ends, not too interested in the defense. So that's kind of a quick rundown, at least, of where I'm at for XFL DFS Week 6. Trying to go over to DraftKings real quick. We'll try to build like a lineup and then kind of go from there. So let me get that brought up on the screen as we are talking. So going over DraftKings. Or I'll kind of break it down. I'll try to build like a cash game lineup, and then I will try to go through and do just kind of like where my exposure is, kind of where I'm going to be overweight or underweight to the field most likely. So I'm just getting this to load here real quick. So I think cash game, there's a couple different options at quarterback. So if you're playing cash game, you could pay up for DiNucci. He's $11,500. Dormady is going to be a very interesting option for cash games just because he's half the price essentially of Ben DiNucci. So I think that opens up a lot. I think you're going to play Brian Hill at running back if you're playing cash this week. Wide receiver kind of opens up a big ball here. Defense wise, it's probably going to be the Brahmas, the Sea Dragons, or the Renegades. We'll just throw the Brahmas in there for now since they are the cheapest option overall. Justin Smith's probably going to be a cash game option if I'm being completely honest. We could see Abram Smith come into cash game as well, especially if Raquel Armstead's out once again. So let's throw Abram in there and see what this kind of looks like at this point in time. Personally, I like playing Cody Lattimore. I like Lance Lenoir a lot this week too. I think he's a potential cash game play. So we'd have $10,800 here. So you'd be looking at like a Jeff Badette if you're going to build it this way. If you wanted to go up to like a Ja'Cour Pearson, obviously we need to open up, about $300 more as well, which is maybe we take Abram Smith off and then kind of go from there. So that's one way to do it. Obviously, if you pay up for quarterback, you're going to have to pay down somewhere else. Maybe that is going to a guy like Lance Lenoir. Maybe it's going to, somebody else that's just a little bit cheaper as well. So that's kind of the general thoughts that I at least have for cash this week. Personally, not playing too much cash for XFL myself, but that is just something that I'd like to mention as well. When we look at kind of everything as a whole, Ben DiNucci, if I'm playing him, probably playing a decent amount of Ja'Cour Pearson with him. I want to be a little bit overweight to the field on Blake Jackson because I feel like people are going to be down on him after the down week. Typically a guy that has a pretty safe floor too. So that's just something that interesting that happened. I want to be probably a little bit overweight to Jordan VC this week because I think more people are going to go after Green and Willis after the last couple of weeks. So I think VC could kind of cycle through. It seems like one of those three guys ends up scoring a touchdown. Guessing the right one's kind of the hard part. I don't have a problem playing like Ben DiNucci and Bradwell together. If you want to get really interesting, you can throw TJ Hammond into the mix as well. AJ McCarron, if I'm playing him, I don't mind playing him alongside Brian Hill, honestly. Probably playing AJ McCarron probably in line with the field, if I'm being completely honest. Hakeem Butler, I'll probably be in line with the field, maybe just a little bit overweight. I like playing those two guys together, but you obviously have to pay down somewhere else. Austin Pro, I'll probably be in line with the field. Darius Shepard, I'll be a little bit underweight to the field. Steve Mitchell might come in a couple lineups here and there if I 20 max once again this week. So probably one or two lineups that he would be in. Brandon Silvers, this is a difficult one, honestly, because I feel like everybody's kind of got the same view on Silvers this week, where they're probably going to be underweight to what they assume is going to be his ownership, or that he's not going to have that high of ownership this week. So I think there's advantages to be had there. It's a little bit more contrarian play than he would be in other weeks. DC's obviously got a decent defense, but I do like the upside that Silvers could offer us as well. So stacking him, I like putting him with Burnett. Obviously, Justin Smith's going to be a popular one. Travell Harris, you can obviously get there. Cedric Byrd. A lot of different options for him. You're probably stacking two of his pass catchers along with him more times than not. Even if you want to play Max Borghi with him, definitely makes some sense as well. Brett Hundley, assume that he's not starting, so we won't talk about him. Jordan Ta'amu, I think he's going to be a little bit too popular this week. Probably going to be underweight to the field on him. You definitely don't have to stack him, but probably Ricky Jackson, Chris Blair if I'm going to do it. And then we get down to Luis Perez. If I'm playing Luis Perez, I'm playing Jeff Badet with him. Pretty simple there. If you really want to take some shots on Geronimo Allison, you can do that. Probably be a little bit underweight field on him. Might get one or two shares in like 20 max. And then maybe a share of Martavis Bryant just in case this is the week for him. But didn't look that good. Obviously been dealing with the knee injury for the past 2 weeks. So don't expect too much from him overall. If you want to throw like a sneak Sweeting in one of those lineups, would make some sense as well. Paxton Lynch not starting, obviously. Derek King, we're not worried about. Kyle Slaughter, not worried about. Jack Cohen, we're not worried about. So I think we get all the way down to Quentin Dormati. If I am playing him, it's going to be with Cody Lattimore. It's going to be with Lance Lenore. Probably those two together more times than not, but definitely at least one of them. So that's where I'm mainly focused for that Orlando team. I think people will be overweight to Charleston Rambo. I will not be one of those people. So that's kind of where I'm at in terms of the quarterbacks. We'll go over the running backs real quick and kind of run through it. So Abram Smith, I'll probably be a little bit underweight to the field or even with the field if we get news that Raquel Armstead is out once again. Might be a little bit overweight on Max Borghi. Definitely will be overweight on Brian Hill. He's kind of the guy I get overweight to. Davian Smith, I'll probably be a little bit overweight just because of the opportunities this week. Obviously, Kalen Ballage, Morgan Ellison are both not playing. Underweight to Rod Smith this week. Probably not getting any Jermaine Martin, even though I think he's a decent running back, but the opportunity is just not there at this point in time. Darius Bradwell, probably be like even with the field, maybe just a little bit underweight, honestly. Calvin Turner, I want to get some shares if he plays, just because this is a guy I really liked out of Hawaii. I don't know how involved he'll be week one, but I want to have at least one share of him because, you know, it is somebody that I do like quite a bit. Obviously, there is some personal bias there. John Lovett might get one share of this week, honestly. Not expecting too much. So Jaquiz Patrick, I'll have some shares. I'll probably be a little bit overweight to what his ownership ultimately ends up being, though. TJ Hammonds, maybe a share here and there, just kind of as a dart throw. The rest of these guys, not super interested in at this point in time. For the wide receiver position, Ja'Cory Pearson probably be about even with the field. Josh Gordon underweight to him. Jeff Badet, I'll be overweight. Hakeem Butler about even with the field or slightly overweight. Deontay Burnett probably be overweight to the field, honestly. I think a lot more people will be on Justin Smith. Landon Akers, I'm probably going to have zero Landon Akers shares this week, especially at $8,700 first game back. Don't really know what his role is going to be. Blake Jackson, I'll be slightly overweight. Darius Shepard, I'll be underweight. Charleston Rambo, I'll be underweight on. This does have an out next to Martavis Bryant now. I don't know if that's new or not. I'll have to look into that and leave it down in the comments. Let's see what else we got here. Sal Canal probably be a little bit underweight too as well. Geronimo Allison probably about even with the field. Josh Hammond won't have any exposure to. Lattimore I'll be overweight to. Austin Perel probably in line with the field. Tolliver I'll probably be overweight to, but it's like one share in 20 lineups, honestly. Travell Harris I'll be overweight to. Lucky Jackson probably in line with the field. Sweeting probably not getting to any of this week unless that Martavis Bryant is actually out. Cedric Bird probably a little bit overweight to the field. Tyler Vaughn's a little bit overweight to the field, maybe. Jordan Vesey, I'll be overweight to the field. Chris Blair probably in line with the field. Let's see. Justin Smith, I don't know, honestly. I feel like I'll have a decent amount of exposure to him, but it might be a little bit underweight to the field just because I am so high on Lance Lenore once again this week and some of those other guys in that range. Juwan Green, maybe about in line with the field if I had to guess. Lance Lenore, I'll be overweight. Damian Willis, I'll be underweight. TJ Vasher probably be overweight too at this point in time. TJ Vasher and Lance Lenore, probably why I'm not getting to as much like Justin Smith as probably some other people will get to. Fred Brown, maybe a dart throw here and there. But that's kind of what there is in terms of wide receivers at this point in time. Going over to defenses, I'll have a good amount of the Renegades. Obviously, they're the most expensive, so it'll be a little bit difficult. Probably not playing the Battlehawks this week, if I'm being honest. Defenders, probably not playing Sea Dragon. So mainly I'll be playing the Renegades, the Sea Dragons, a little bit of the Roughnecks, and the Brahmas. Those would be the 4 defenses that I would be targeting this week. But that's pretty much what I do have in terms of XFL picks for week number 6. If you guys have any specific questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments and I'll get back to you as quickly as possible. You can also message me on Twitter at CoachCraigSport or on Patreon at patreon.com/CoachCraigSport, and I'll be more than happy to answer your questions as well. Also, before I get out of here, gotta throw the promo code Coach at Run the Sims, save 10%. Gotta throw that up. Run the Sims is one of the best optimizers for spring football, whether it's XFL or USFL, which will be coming around pretty soon, which I will also be doing content for. Definitely be sure to check that out. They have a DIY optimizer, so you can put in some of those target shares, some of those carry rates that I mentioned earlier, some of the percentage of pass attempts to get the best projections. If you like the ones they already have, then you just roll with their projections. If you want to alter something just a little bit, go over to the DIY and just change it a little bit. Get your own projections, save them as a CSV file, upload it to the regular optimizer, and then optimize from there. So definitely a great site for spring football. Definitely a site that I would recommend, and use promo code Coach when you first sign up and you'll save 10% as well. But with that being said, that's really all I have for this live stream for today for XFL DFS picks for week number 6. Hopefully you guys all enjoyed. If you were watching live, definitely do appreciate it. If you're watching on replay, appreciate it as well. And if you're brand new to my channel, checking it out for the first time, please consider subscribing. Definitely would appreciate it. Helps to build the community that we're trying to build here at Coach Craig Sports, which is one that's really for you, the viewers, helping you with your DFS. Right now, it's the XFL DFS, it's NBA DFS. Pretty shortly around the corner, we'll have some MLB DFS and some USFL DFS as well. So if you're into any of that, which I'm guessing you're at least into the XFL since you're watching this video, definitely be sure to check out all those videos. Make sure that you subscribe. Make sure that you have that notification bell turned on so you never miss a beat for any of the content that I do upload throughout the week. But with that being said, that's really all I have for today's video, for today's live stream. Definitely do appreciate everyone that did take the time out of their day to tune in. Definitely means a lot to me, and I hope that each and every one of you has a great rest of your day.